It's time for the papers now. Going to start off with reactions to Mark Zuckerberg's appearance before EU lawmakers in Brussels yesterday. It's on the front of the Financial Times, isn't it, Dipti?
That's right, accompanied by a caption that his apology tour of Europe continues. Obviously, before his meeting with Emmanuel Macron that's planned today, he was grilled for over an hour by EU lawmakers in Brussels yesterday. This, of course, over Facebook's privacy laws after the data hacking scandal involving Cambridge Analytica. As we see on the front page of the Financial Times, Zuckerberg's apology tour hits Europe, that's what they're saying. Now, the social media billionaire did frustrate MPs yesterday because he offered very little answers to their questions, really rehashing the I'm sorries, the profuse apologies we've heard from him in the past. In many ways, it was not just one, but two Facebook-sized middle fingers to Europe, at least for this Dutch cartoonist, Ruben Oppenheimer.
Okay, it's also on the front page of Libération, because after Brussels, Zuckerberg is heading to Paris today to meet with President Emmanuel Macron.
Well, the apology tour will continue in Paris today ahead of the planned Tech for Good summit that aims to showcase France's support for startups. And they've invited representatives from companies like Uber, IBM, and big data companies. All of this taking place before Europe's strict data privacy laws come into effect on Friday. So all of this is pretty well timed. Now, one French startup founder wonders in Libération in a pretty interesting article if tech moguls, US tech moguls, are really the right people to be consulting in a decision about technology for the greater good. I quote, "Is it in the interest of the greater good to Uberize entire industries from taxis to bookshops? It's certainly in the interest of companies and their shareholders, but certainly not in the interests of the greater good." Rather than the Tech for Good summit, the writer says it's more of a good for me summit, really attacking that individualism that we could be seeing.
Another French story. Emmanuel Macron presented his ideas for combating discrimination and unemployment in les banlieues, that's the French suburbs, yesterday.
The impoverished French suburbs that crop up from time and time again in the news here in France. Well, L'Opinion, the right-wing paper, explains that the French president has said he wants to break with previous traditions of presenting a formal plan for the banlieue or the French suburbs. Instead, he's vowed to leave it up to business owners to create a, quote, policy of dignity and emancipation when it comes to tackling issues like discrimination and unemployment. Now, this cartoon from the cartoonist Cac is quite tongue-in-cheek, portraying Macron as the god Jupiter. Indeed, that's a reference that's frequently made in the French papers, this sort of all-powerful god Jupiter. Here he is telling a very stereotypical young man from the banlieue, it must be said, help yourself and the skies will help you, some sort of lofty encouragement.
His strategy, though, does seem to have got quite a lot of support in the papers, doesn't it?
Well, at least from Les Echos, which is a French business paper, they've really welcomed the strategy, hailing his effort not to portray those in the impoverished suburbs as, quote, either victims or responsible for their difficulties. That's how François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy, the previous presidents, respectively, did. Le Figaro, the right-leaning paper, hails Macron's strategy because, after all, they say, 4 decades of previous policies on the suburbs haven't exactly worked out, so let's give this one a chance. Only those at the communist paper L'Humanité, they're really against his strategy, saying it will bridge more divisions in France and reminding us that 42% of those in the banlieue live under the line of poverty.
And Dipti's going to go back to that story we mentioned in the news. New York, for our last story. A couple have successfully sued their grown-up son for not leaving the family nest. He was 30, wasn't he?
That's right. He'll soon be 31, in fact. So
wow. Okay.
Time is ticking.
Even older. Yeah.
It really does feel like the real-life version of Tanguy, that French film about a son who won't leave the family nest. Well, People magazine report that Mark and Christina Rotundo have tried for months to get their 30-year-old son Michael to move out, including written letters, threats of eviction, cash incentives. nothing's worked so far. He actually moved back in with them 8 years ago after losing his job and just, I guess, seems to enjoy being at home a little too much. So they've taken him to court where a state supreme judge has ruled in their favor, saying Michael must move out, quashing his request for 6 more months at home. He's called the decision outrageous, admitting, though, that the lawsuit really did make living at home kind of awkward.
Slightly, I would have thought, yeah.
He does say, this guy really does have a lot of guts. He does say he should at least get a 30-day eviction notice like any other tenant, and now wants to appeal the decision. Talk about extreme case of tough love.
Yeah, he wasn't really a tenant, was it? I wonder if he did his own washing.
No, he says food was not provided.
OK. There you go, all the details from Dipty. Dipty Laurent. With the French press review. Just the press review of France 24. We'll be back with another one in a couple of hours' time. In the next half hour of the programme, we're going to be reporting for you from one of the 2 places in the world where divorce is illegal. Now, one is the Vatican, the other one is the Philippines. Now, though, the Philippines recognising divorces granted abroad as the Catholic country modernises, very slightly, its policies.